We were goofing I had a sheet of brass.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Joshua Fernandez. I work on the EDGE team. It's the Innovation and R&D team for the United Church of Canada. I'd like to maybe begin and ground our time together, acknowledging our presence in Mi'kmaq, ancestral unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The territory that covers the treaty that covers this territory is the Treaties of People and Friendship. The Mi'kmaq and the Maliseet people signed this with the British Crown in 1725. This being the year 2018, that's 293 years ago. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of the land as they are unceded, and it is, in fact, when they began to recognize Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and establish rules for what was going to be an ongoing relationship between the nations, the Crown. That was pre-Confederation since 1725, so 1867 was Confederation, and beyond that, I'm new on this territory. I'm from Toronto, which is covered with the dish with one spoon territory. I'm always nervous doing new acknowledgements, and I guess that's a sign of doing it somewhat from a place of heart. So may we all be grounded in the spirit of truth first, and then reconciliation in the work that we do in social enterprise, today at the Jam and across Turtle Island in our living gently on this territory and the territories that we travel to. As I said, my name is Joshua Fernandez. I'm incredibly honored and privileged to be here with you all. Thank you. Today, we have a great guest speaker that I'll introduce in a moment, and then we have an interactive portion where I am going to mine your theological brains and hearts and ask you to provide me with your underpinning of why the church should be involved in social enterprise. So you're going to put your thinking caps on. The second part will be interactive. First, we're going to fill you up with some beautiful knowledge from Professor David Deane. I came to know him through Neil Bennett, the president of EST. I met him at lunch in July. And I told him about how I spent my whole 20s kind of raging against the systems, very eventually futile. And I realized I would rip up money and I would make art. And what I said, I committed class suicide. I came from an immigrant family that let me live the life that I could dream of, and I washed dishes, and I didn't really know how to fit in the capitalist modality. And I didn't like being implicated in so much oppression that happens every single time I spend $1 at the name of efficiency. And then I realized through a series of mental revelations that the most radical thing to do of all time was to be Christ-like, and to discipleship is ultimately the calling of healing ourselves and healing the world and seeing every person on the supply chain, as Rick so beautifully said in that grace blessing, blessing the truck driver, blessing the seed, blessing the person who harvested, and all of us as collectively the body of Christ. So, Neil put me on to David Deane, and he's going to kick us off with some knowledge. And I'm grateful for that, David. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Josh. I am thrilled to be part of this today, and thank you all for being here. There's two parts to my presentation. The first part is going to look a little bit at how the way thinking and knowing happens in the last few hundred years, how this inevitably leads to what I'm going to call the commoditization of the natural order and the reduction of persons to utility. Okay? So what I'm going to be speaking about for the first half is how the ways that we habitually think inevitably lead us to think about the natural order in terms of commodity and people in terms of utility. And then after a break, I'm going to suggest that lots of the things that we do within our own congregations, within our own parishes, that these can be revolutionary acts, helping to rewire our brains so that this process of commodification and seeing people in terms of utility can be challenged. Everything that I'm going to say in the first half can be summed up in one slide. And if you could click, Joshua, this slide that I want to introduce. Now this is a raccoon.
Yes.
Raccoons have evolved really good, positive practices. So for example, when a raccoon gets a piece of food, the first thing they do is wash it. So if they have any water around them, they give it a wee rinse. This is an evolutionary acquired trait which have helped raccoons, essentially take over many of our urban neighborhoods. But raccoons weren't prepared for some parts of the 21st century. Because this little guy here has found cotton candy floss. You just click there and see what happens. Again, evolution. I should give a trigger warning before this. It's very hard to watch. Look at him. He's devastated. Another guy, more candy floss. What are you going to do? We wash all of them. Now again, these are good traits that he's acquired. And yet at this time, they turn parasitic upon himself. And what I'm going to be talking about is really good developments in thinking, really positive things that have helped us put people on the moon, that have helped us tackle diseases and wipe out things like, cowpox and things like that. Really good things. But in a particular period of time, they have fueled things like the nuclear arms race, like the imminent environmental disaster and the ongoing environmental disaster, and have made a virulent form of racism possible. Okay? So, what am I speaking about here? In very broad strokes. Can you imagine how you would feel if you were told that the sun is not going to rise tomorrow morning and move around the sky and set tomorrow evening? It would be traumatic. It would make you question everything you know. And yet, at a certain period of human history, people were told, actually, the sun doesn't do that thing. It kind of stays pretty much still, and we move around it. And this is one of a whole series of scientific developments which cause people to ask, okay, if our own eyes deceive us, how can we know what's real? How can we know things with certainty? And European culture emerges on a rapid quest for certainty. Now, the desire to find certainty is nothing new. Islamic philosophers like Avicenna, Christian thinkers like Thomas Aquinas have all said, knowledge you can be certain about, knowledge that's measurable and quantifiable, that's really cool knowledge. But they also felt that most really important kinds of knowledge can't be known like that. It's knowledge that can be experienced in your body, knowledge through relationship, knowledge which is a relationship between the knower and the known, knowledge which can't be quantified. But in the European West, we started to make certain shifts which said that knowledge, real knowledge, is things that can be measured and quantified. And this other stuff that used to be called knowledge, because you can't be certain about it, it's not really knowledge. It's kind of, opinion, or superstition, or fancy. And so today, for example, people like Richard Dawkins will suggest that belief in God is like belief in the flying spaghetti monster. And he's 100% correct in that he has things you can be certain about, aka knowledge, and all the rest, opinion and fancy. That's a real problem. And it's a problem most other cultures don't have. It's a problem that affects us here in the West, we here who've evolved certain economic processes, which have led to the brutalization of the natural order. So we start thinking about the real in terms of things that can be measured and quantified, and the stuff that can't be measured and quantified is a kind of bracket. That's a kind of opinion. So take, for example, Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas, it would have been very easy for me to come here and talk about, Hildegard of Bingen or Julian of Norwich or Meister Eckhart or someone really, really cool. But even Thomas Aquinas will say, well, when we encounter a tree, we will have the tree that we can see and touch and feel. But then the tree is in relationship with God outside of that. And so what the tree is irreducible to my experience. It has a dignity because God loves it, and that relationship between it and God gives it a sense of enchantedness. So even someone as dry and sterile as Thomas Aquinas is walking around seeing the natural order as something which can be touched and felt and measured, but also something which can be in relationship with God, which means that it can't be reduced to us. Now this starts to change when all that other aspect gets put under erasure. We think, you can click on to the next slide there, Joshua. We enter a period, and this is one of my favourite quotes from Alistair McIntyre, where he says, the facts like telescopes and wigs for gentlemen were a 17th century invention, where the emphasis is on something which can be, the real is reduced to facts, and everything else, speculation, doesn't count. And so with this, we derive thinkers like Immanuel Kant. And anyone who knows anything about Immanuel Kant knows that the way we think about thinking in the last few hundred years has been so influenced and determined by Immanuel Kant. He will say, we can't know stuff that we can't experience, touch, feel, sense. All we can know is what the tree is for us. Therefore, the tree is what it is relative to me. And so I can say it's beautiful for art. I can say it's useful as a commodity. It's useful as a utility. It's something that I can get shelter from. It's something that I can get fruit from. But cut off from its relationship to the transcendent, it slides into utility for me. And so the natural order, which was a kind of home held out between us experiencing it and engaging it and using it, and its relationship with the divine, which gives it a dignity and a sacredness, that connection is snipped because we can't be certain about it. And so it only is what it is pro me, for me. This is central to all modern ways of thinking. We train people in that. Let's say you've got, a young Islamic student and they're studying the Crusades at St. Mary's or here, and they're looking at why Saladin won this battle. And they say, number one, it was God's will. Well, the professor will go, that may be so, but that's not evidence. We can't base that on evidence or reason. So you've got to cut that off and work with what can be shown, what can be demonstrated. We're reducing the real, that which happens, the natural order, to things that can be measured. That's what in many ways critical thinking is, the stuff we do in universities. In many ways we strive to bracket anything else that may be the case and reduce things to what we can see, touch and feel, therefore reduce things to what they mean for us, and therefore to inevitably lead to the commodification. Karl Marx gets this. Marx says a commodity appears at first sight a very trivial thing, easily understood. Its analysis shows that it is, in reality, a very queer thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties and theological mannerisms. The identification of something as a commodity sees it as a device which can be used for me to elevate me, to gratify me, to heal me, but its isness is bound up with me and my utilization of it. And this is a shift from seeing its true isness as something that is vis-a-vis God. That's a massive shift. Now, we can see how in the Industrial Revolution, and Marx is really good on this, The Industrial Revolution, and of course Marx, he gets this from Hegel and others. It's the Renaissance and the Enlightenment made flesh. Christians talk about Jesus as the Word made flesh. The Industrial Revolution and the approach to the commodification of the real and the utilization of the real in the service of our advancement, that's these epistemological moves made flesh. It's the natural expression of them. So when we think about the environmental crisis, we're thinking about a whole host of practices which are the instantiation, as Marx notes, of a theological view of the world. That it is what it is for me. It is not what it is relative to something else which is outside of my field of vision. I want to give one final example of that before I finish this first section. And it's deeply troubling. But I want to start it with a bizarre, astonishing, and striking, dare I say, a fact. From Easter until about 1500, there's a vast array of texts written. Right? By our standards, there's very few. But there's still lots and lots and lots of texts. You can read them. You can go in, you can look at, like I haven't read all of Augustine, for example. There's just masses of it. And you can go through all these pages, all these pages, all these pages. And there's one thing you won't find. You won't find the assertion that person A is inferior to person B by virtue of the colour of their skin. Now this is our best kept secret. We don't want, for some reason, we who are so enthused by the modern project, we don't want this to get out, because it will indict all these wonderful things we've done in the last few hundred years. But the fact is that for most of human history, now there is prejudice galore. Women are marginalized and brutalized, for someone like Augustine in North Africa, or for Alexandrians in Egypt. Northern Europeans were barbarians, they're little better than animals. But the idea that person A is better or worse than person B because of the colour of their skin doesn't feature. Because they couldn't think it. Why couldn't they think it? Well, we have a clue in chapter 23 of the City of God, where Augustine is talking about all different kinds of human beings. And he talks about different races, but also he talks about people who are, in his eyes, they might exist, they might not exist, like conjoined twins. He's heard about them, but he's never seen them. And he's asking, are they people with all the dignity and the rights of everyone else? And for Augustine, of course. Because their dignity is not based upon what they look like. Their dignity is predicated on the fact that God loves them. And so because God's love them, they can either attain that dignity or lose that dignity. And think again what's happening with Kant. Think again what's happening with the Enlightenment. We've got to bracket all that stuff that's outside of our field of vision. God's relationship with people. And we've just got to look at the people based upon observable, quantifiable data. So we reduce things to their phenomenological appearance. That's the data. That's stuff that can be measured. And based on that, we get things like this. Here we have Harper's Weekly. Again, this is not ancient history. This is about 150 years ago. And this is ubiquitous. This is not the fringe alt-right. This is the academy. This is what people think. They think that it's visible based upon the phenomenological appearance, the hierarchy of races. And so there they see you have the Anglo-Teutonic, there you have the Irish-Iberian, and there you have what they call the Negro. Because they understand the real based upon observable things. Now again, the scientific revolution is wonderful. It's amazing, it's beautiful. But like a raccoon at the start, it's a perfectly good thing that in a certain period of time can turn back and turn parasitic upon us. The raccoon's trade of washing food came a cropper when it tried to wash cotton candy. As soon as we reduce the real to the phenomenological, it's only a matter of time before we reduce the natural order to its banal appearance, and people to measurable things. And on the basis of that, we get this. The ubiquity of this is what fuels many of the horrors of the 20th century. You know, people will debate about the various cultural lineages which lead to Adolf Hitler. If you read Mein Kampf, the most significant figure mentioned is Charles Darwin. His basic understanding, albeit a faulty understanding, of natural selection. But it's predicated on this movement. So this is the point that I'm trying to make in this first half. We are all schooled habitually in ways of thinking which reduce the real to its appearance, which work with what can be known with certainty, the facts. The facts, man, just give me the facts. And in so doing, we reduce things to what is measurable and quantifiable. In that, we cut away any dignity outside of our field of vision and mean that things are what they are, qua me, relative to me. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, you might think this person has dignity, but for me they don't. You might think this piece of land should be used for something other than fracking. I personally don't. All different opinions. So this is our crisis. It's a crisis in which we're not only habitually schooled, but we go to schools to learn. And if our students don't reduce the real to the measurable and the quantifiable, we fail them. We actually, it's what we teach. We pride ourselves in that. Come here and teach ways of thinking which have led to environmental disaster and have us on the brink of a nuclear war. That's what we're doing. And we know we need to try and stop it. And so we have figures, good people who want to come out and sort of say what the problem is. But when they do so, when they say how we're going to solve this environmental catastrophe, how we're going to solve this interpersonal catastrophe, the habits and the ways of thinking that we're ingrained in come out. And so Al Gore says, we're going to win this. We're solving the crisis. His thinking is, we Western European thinkers, we have mastered the natural order with the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. We can work that out and we're going to solve this crisis. It's a bit like a knife cuts a wound in you, and you say, give me that knife, I'm going to cut this wound out. And we use the same thing that gave us the injury to try and fix the injury. Click again and we'll see. He says this is the biggest opportunity, the biggest business opportunity in the history of the world. The logic of growth and ravenous consumption of the natural order for wealth, which has fueled the crisis, somehow we can leverage that in the service of curing the crisis. Again, it's a bit like, you know, I've got a weight problem because I eat bad food. I think pizza is the answer. If I eat enough of this thing, my doctor talks about the Mediterranean diet, and my first thought is, how much salsa will I have to consume before I live? My natural way of thinking is, how can I use the stuff that gave me the problem to overcome the problem? This is Al Gore. Look at the amount of boards he's on. Apple are worth $1 trillion. These are the people who we look up to solve this problem. And so I'm going to suggest after a break in the second half that we might actually be able to look closer to home for strategies, practices, and tactics which can derail and destabilize these forms of thinking. Thank you.
So we'll take a quick 5 to 7 minute bio break, stretch, have some water, and then come back for round 2. Let's ask that we refrain from questions, and then we'll do all the Q&A after the second round. Thank you.
El modo Q&A.